everyone, and welcome to a really very special episode of Invisible Not Broken. I am taking a departure from our usual interview process, and I'm so excited. I have Emily Guy Birken here, who is a financial guru, financial mensch, and she has a world of books and a whole lot of really good advice. And I am making her think a little outside of her usual box in how she can help those of us with chronic illness and disability handle our finances. Emily, I'm so excited to talk to you. How did you get involved in you're not involved in the chronic illness world per se, but how did you get involved in financial planning?
So it was really an accident. You know how so much of life is, just what happens when you're making other plans, as they say. So I'm actually an English teacher by training. I taught high school English for 4 years. And then my husband and I moved while I was pregnant with my first child, who was due at the beginning of the next school year. So I knew I wasn't going to be teaching that year. And so I decided to find some writing gigs just to keep a little bit of money coming in while I took that year off. One of the first blogs that I was able to land was a site called ptmoney.com. So while I don't have a specific background in finance, I didn't major in economics or anything like that. I don't have an MBA. My father was a financial planner. So growing up, I kind of grew up a little bit in the industry, and I have been a money nerd from birth. Like, I was the kid who was taking all of my money out of the piggy bank and counting it and putting it all back in again.
I love that. I mean, like with my kids, what we did is we did a 30, certain percentage went to charity, certain percentage went to savings, certain percentage they could decide what they were going to spend it on. So what were some of your big takeaways from being a kid of a financial planner? What did you end up implementing with your own children? I'm taking notes, by the way. This is not altruism for all of my listeners. I'm taking notes.
So, well, from my dad, what's funny is my sister and I we're 3 years apart. We're raised in the same household. So I was the one who it stuck when my dad would say things like, the best result with your taxes is to get a modest refund in April. And a modest refund I knew was $500 or less. And so I'm a 9-year-old who has this rattling around in my brain. So, my dad didn't necessarily, so my dad was very good at the kind of investment side of money. And he was not so, budgeting was not necessarily his strong suit. So he did not necessarily pass on specific ideas and things like that to me. But my husband and I have started, we've got an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, 2 boys. And so they each get an allowance. It's equal to their age. So the 8-year-old gets $8 and the 5-year-old gets $5. And I make them, when they get their allowance or when they spend it, they each have a little ledger where they have to write down what they got and figure out how much that they have, and then count the money in their money jar to make sure that the money matches their math. So that I want to get them in the habit of tracking their spending and tracking their income, and also in the habit of doing the math regularly. I think is also very, very good. So I want them to be the sort of people who are not overwhelmed by making change and things like that. As much as in the modern world, you don't need it so much anymore, but it's still, I think, an important thing to be able to do that quickly in your head.
That's fantastic. And so while you haven't really dealt with chronic illness yourself and budgeting, you did have to deal with disability. And I just wonder, we have a great international audience. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We're in the United States. So if you have a baby in the United States, it is a very different experience than in some of the other countries where you guys actually get more sanity and help. I'll go into politics later. But you had to budget for that because you were essentially what was on disability for when your child was born. How did you handle your finances to be ready for that change in income? Is it I forgot what it is because I haven't had a baby for a very long time, and I have not been able to work for a very long time. What is the percentage of income again?
Well, if you actually can go on disability, it's generally something like 60%. In my case, because we moved, I was not in the same school district. I just basically no income whatsoever. So we didn't know that we were going to move when we had a baby. but Ari, our oldest, is 8. He was born in 2010. My husband and I got married in 2008. And so as of when we got married, I had us. We decided it together, but I am very much the money money guru in the marriage as well. But so I decided we decided to live on his income and then have mine go to our debts. He bought the house that we lived in when we first were married in 2005, when they were just throwing bags of money at anyone with a pulse. And so
I remember that year.
Yeah. And so it was one of those situations where he was able to put something like $4,000 down, and then the rest of the down payment was a home equity line of credit. If we'd been married when he bought the house, I would have been extremely uncomfortable with that and argued against it. So I did not like having, it was about $33,000 sitting over our heads. So I was like, let's get this paid off. And so that's what we did. We lived on his income and we used mine to pay that off and to go towards my student loans. Excuse me. So that was, by doing that, we got that paid off in about 1.5 to 2 years, right about when we were ready to move. We had a couple of months where it was completely gone. And because we had gotten used to living on one income, we were in a place where I could take that year off. And the original plan was I was just going to take it off and just not have any income at all. And then added to that, the new job that he got a raise. So that also helped a little bit. But it was this kind of planning ahead that has always been, like, as I said, I've always been a money nerd. That's always been the sort of thing, like, I want to be nimble on my feet financially. And so that's like, I want to reduce whatever obligations I have so that in the future, if there's, if something happens, we have a baby or we move or I lose my job or whatever, we don't have these obligations that are going to make things difficult.
That is wonderful advice for everyone. I don't think people understand that debt is an ankle bracelet that you wear, that you kind of drag everything around behind you. You can't move easily. You can't change jobs easily. There's a lot of almost prison time you spend with debt. It's definitely a good thing. So if you're thinking about like a new diagnosis, or if you're looking at a life where you're going to be, would your first suggestion be like, hey, let's see what we can do about the debt?
Yes, I think that would be. So it's one of those, like, it kind of depends on where in the diagnosis journey you are. For some people, so as I mentioned before we started, I have an aunt who has cerebral palsy. And so, she has known her entire life that she has to figure things out. The other situation that I've dealt with disability was my mother in 2012 got pneumonia. And it was bad enough that she was put into a medically induced coma. So she's doing a lot better now. She's able to work and all of that. But she hosted my sister's baby shower on, I think, Sunday to Thursday. She was in the hospital and in a coma. So it was like that. And that's the sort of thing where, like, there's no way to plan ahead for that kind of disability situation. That's depending on where you are in the process. Like, if you know that you're, like, if I could have talked to my mom on that Tuesday, I would not have said, worry about debt. It would have been more like, let us know where all the passwords are.
Well, you make an incredible point. Well, let's start in with the beautiful naivete that most healthy people have, which is, I will work till I retire. Mm-hmm. And as you know, and I'm sure as most people honestly do know, but don't like to think about, there's no guarantees. So just as a regular person, or someone who, there's Alzheimer's in the family or something, just someone who's just thinking in, like, not regular chronic illness terms, what are some of the basic steps you should take to make sure that you and your family are set up for the, oh my God, I'm now in a medically induced coma?
There's a couple of things that I would suggest. The first one is make sure that money is a family affair. Because one of the things that made my mom's illness very, very difficult is that she and my stepfather have always kept their money separate. So back in the day, they would, when they'd pay the mortgage, they'd put two checks into the envelope to send it to the bank. I don't know how they do it now that everything's online. And they just split everything down the middle. And so he didn't have access to her bank accounts. He didn't know what things were paid automatically, what had to be. So, and it's a situation that certainly works for them, but provided both of them are healthy. And so, and my stepfather is a lovely man who does not handle crises particularly well. So that's the sort of thing where like every family needs to make sure money is a family affair and that there's an emergency binder somewhere. And those are the sorts of things where like it's always, the Stephen Covey matrix of importance and of tasks. That's the important but not urgent task that never gets taken care of. But making sure that, you at least every member of the family who might need to take care of finances knows where to find the finances or even what bank you bank with. Because that was part of it, because my mom had more than one bank account in different banks, and my stepfather didn't know where to find them. So that's the first thing is remember you're not an island. And make sure that the finances in your family are a family affair, no matter how you do them. Like you could still keep things completely separate, but as long as you both know how to access each other's just in case. So that's the first thing. Then the second thing is to make sure that you have some sort of emergency fund somewhere. So, they typically say, start an emergency fund with $1,000. And that's, again, that's kind of geared towards the people who are living paycheck to paycheck, who never seem to be able to get ahead. And that's really important. And it's absolutely a great place to start. But what you want to eventually get to is an emergency fund that will cover 3 to 6 months worth of your expenditures, your expenses. And remember, it's your expenses, not 3 to 6 months worth of income. So because with your expenses, there's always stuff you can cut. You can say like, oh, okay, well, if someone were in a medically induced coma, we're canceling cable, we're doing this, we're cutting that, we're not going to be eating dinners in restaurants, or we'll be eating more dinners in restaurants and fewer groceries. But remember, it's expenses rather than income, because if you say try to have 3 to 6 months worth of income set aside, that is going to freak people out. People are like, how would I do that?
and even just like, for a lot of us, especially who are chronically ill and are on disability, the idea of being able to save any money is almost an impossibility. What do you think about apps like Acorn, where it takes like what you normally spend and rounds up to a change of, like, I was shocked. I got Acorn a while ago, and I'm not being funded by Acorn at all, but I really do love the app. But it takes whatever I spend, and then it takes the amount to $1 and puts it away in a money market. And I was shocked at how quick I got to $1,000. Like, that says way too much about my spending habits and my Amazon addiction, but it's funny because I thought I didn't have any money to spare, but I didn't notice the money gone. So do you recommend things like Acorn or things like that?
Absolutely.
I can hear everyone right now going, that's nice for you guys. There's no way I could save any money. And I'm trying to think like ways that people could still, even if they are almost to the bone.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm a big proponent of doing whatever financially fits your psychology. So, because one of the problems with the personal finance world is we have this tendency to be like, there's one way to do things, and if you're doing it any other way, you're wrong. So, like, if you don't have an Excel spreadsheet and you're not, buying generic toilet paper and saving the
and how dare you go to Starbucks and your avocado toast? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. There is this sense of shaming, and that's something I very much want to push back against, because there is no wrong way. as long as you are reaching your goals. So one of the things I love about the modern world is this fintech, these apps like Acorns, and there's Digit, and there's several of them that allow you to productively ignore your money. That's the way that I describe it.
I love that. That needs to be a tagline for them. You just are a great copy editor.
Well, and that's because that's really what it is. There's so many people who would rather ignore their money, and it's completely understandable. And it used to be, before they had these apps, there was no way to productively ignore your money. There were other workarounds, but there was no way that ignoring it was going to end up with $1,000 in a money market account. And so that's why I'm really grateful to these apps. There are other things, like there are some folks who are perfectly capable of making good decisions with their money. They just don't want to track it. And so there's things like Mint and stuff like that does the tracking for you and gives you the information. And from there, you can decide what you want to do with it. And that's actually also very, very helpful. So there are ways to find a little bit more money in even a disability budget, a fixed income budget. It's a lot more difficult, just as so many other aspects of living are more difficult when you are have experienced a disability and that sort of thing. But it is possible. The thing is, going into it saying there is something I can do and I will do all I can, rather than like, well, what can I do? And so that's really what it's all about is that attitude of like, I can be in control of my money. My money does not have to control my life.
Wow, that's pretty good right there. So if you could have gone back to right before your mom got sick, and obviously a whole bunch of other things, but just on the financial side of it, getting that binder, is there any other major advice you wish that you had been able to change things to make everything easier for her and for your family? I'm gathering she lost her business after she...
Yes. Yeah. My mom owned an art gallery for nearly 40 years. So from the time she was 22 until, yeah. So my mom, she is like a jumper, she's just like, all right, I'm going to do that. And so that's what happened with the art gallery. She was 22 years old. She and my father had been married about a year. He and my grandmother, his mother, owned a donut shop, and she was working at the donut shop with him. And she was reading the want ads because she didn't want to be working at the donut shop her whole life, and saw that someone was selling an art gallery for exactly the amount of money she had just happened to inherit from a distant relative. And so she had minored in art history. So she said, I can do that. And she did for 40 years.
I think I like your mom.
Yeah. She's a pretty incredible lady. So now with the things that I wish we could have done differently, she is also very, very private. And so part of the reason why she got sick was because she was stressed about the business. It was this was in 2012. She had been through many financial downturns and survived them just fine, but this one was sticking. The 2008 downturn was sticking in a way that hadn't before. And because of kind of her privacy, she didn't necessarily confide in my stepfather or my sister or me about what was going on with the gallery. And so we would have been able to help her make decisions prior to getting sick, and it would have been easier making decisions while she was sick. Although in a lot of ways, she said that it's in some ways a blessing that we ended up closing the business while she was asleep, because then she didn't have to make the decision herself. Which I totally get. It closed this chapter on her life, and it was we tried to keep it going for as long as we could, but it was clear we had no choice but to close the business, and it was emotional for all of us. That was who my mom was. But then she also got to focus on getting well rather than like, oh my goodness, how's the business doing? Like her manager, like, is my manager able to do this? Is this happening? So she was focusing on getting well rather than on trying to keep the business going once she came out of her coma.
So, what could someone do to make sure that no matter what, they can have that experience where they can just get well? Is there any insurance that you would recommend? Like, I know that there's like the long term care insurance. I don't know how good that is. By the way, so no one sues us. Let me be really clear. This is just. We're talking, and please don't sue us. We don't have money. And this is really something to also just know about and bring to your financial advisor. This is yes, that's my legal disclaimer for the day. But is there anything? It's like I had to shut my business down very quickly, and we had all of our plans in place for how we could shut the business down without debt, and we could pay off all of our debts. And then I got sick fast. So we were not able to, I've always had the disorder I've had, but it did a huge downturn so quickly that we couldn't shut it down properly. And that's where I really felt for your mom, because making that choice was one of the hardest things we've had to do. I wish I'd had an advisor for this. What is some of your advice for someone who's like getting ready to shut things down, either their business or their career? Is there some, if they have the absolute gift of foresight, what could they put in place as far as insurance or savings or other things?
So, as much as is possible, I am a big believer, and partially because of what happened with my mom, in disability insurance. And I'm also like I believe in long-term care insurance in the right situations. The problem is it is so limiting who can apply for these and who can get them. My mother, I part of the reason why I believe in insurance is my mother is someone who also always believed in insurance. She always carried like the best insurance that she could afford. And so she looked into disability insurance over and over again over the years, but she has lupus. And so she was uninsurable with disability insurance. And insurance companies know the statistics. 1 out of every 4 20-year-old will experience a long or short-term disability before they retire. So, I mean, if a quarter of people are going to experience disability, they're going to make it tough to afford disability insurance. So if it's possible, yes, go for that, but know that it's often going to be out of reach financially. Same thing with long-term care insurance; it's often out of reach financially. So, in that reality, the best thing to do is to know ahead of time what your options are. So, like, go for there's Plan A. Everything goes exactly according to plan. I know that I'm not going to be able to keep my business, but I've got about 6 months, and I can shut it down this way, that way, the other way, and I'll shut it down without debt. Everything will be fine. I'll pay off all my creditors. That's Plan A. Then Plan B. Okay, so Plan B, let's say if it's 3 months rather than 6, what are my options there? And plan out for it. And then Plan C. What if I have to declare bankruptcy? What do I do? So there are 2 reasons for this. One is it's always good to have a plan, particularly if you are in a situation where you're sick and can't carry it out yourself. If you've got it already set up, like, oh, I know what I need to do this date, that date, the other date, someone else can implement it for you. And then the other reason is it takes some of the fear away if you have a plan in place, even for the worst case scenario, because you can say like, oh my God, this is so terrifying. But you know what? I know what I need to do. I know what's going to happen. I know how this is going to affect me and my family financially. It's already taken care of. So I can just focus on getting well because I've already thought through what it's going to look like to declare bankruptcy or what it's going to look like to, shut the business down and have to pay back creditors, things like that.
That is some very, very good advice there. Especially, again, we are in America, so I know that some of you are in kind countries that actually take care of people who are sick. Take a wild guess who I voted for. So I actually know that a lot of you are a little puzzled when we're talking about you have to focus on your finances to get well, because it is not free to go to the hospital here in this country. And it actually, we have I don't remember what the statistics are, but a huge percentage of the people in our country in the United States are bankrupt because of medical bills. So just to be really clear, and now our insurances aren't really covering everything they used to, which is, I'm driving this right back to finances, I promise. I'm so good at getting off track, but I'm on track. You can get very unexpected medical bills where you think you're insured for something and the insurance decides after the fact that that was not insured. So I have gotten $15,000 bills, even with good insurance, for medical scans at an ER. So even if you think you're covered with your insurance, please make sure you have something extra aside for $15,000 unexpected bills. Do you have any, I'm totally asking you something out of the blue, and if you are not ready for this question, just let me know and we'll move right on. But do you have any suggestions about how to handle those medical bills that are very unexpected and in the six figures?
So there are two things that you can do. First, you can always call the hospital and ask for a reduction, ask for negotiation. They are set up to be able to help you pay it back. And sometimes it's like on time, just like, okay, can I give you $50 a month for the rest of my natural life? And they'll be sure. So that's one thing you can do. The other thing you can do is you can really advocate for yourself and complain and argue. And the reason why I say that second is because the sad fact of the matter is that the people who most need to be able to make those claims and arguments are the ones who have the least spoons to be able to do it.
The word.
Yeah, I love that analogy.
Oh God, all of us do. It's the easiest way to explain it.
Mm-hmm. And so that's something where I feel like it's there are medical advocates out there who help with those sorts of things, and depending on the situation, that's it might make sense to hire medical advocates. If you're facing like 5-figure, 6-figure bills, that's terrifying, and a medical advocate can help you. The other option is, when people say, what can I do? The one that you take with you when you buy a new car from a used car dealership, you say, hey, have I got a job for you? But that's something where you can ask friends and family who are, are kind of gathering around to help you as you're dealing with this difficult time, to say like, hey, can you advocate for me if you are not able to afford a professional medical advocate?
I highly recommend that one. My mom does that for me, and I would not survive without her. But that bill, I actually got down by calling and saying, there's no way I can afford this. And they brought it down to $300. So in anecdotal evidence, sometimes just calling me like, there is no way that would ever happen. I came to the hospital in good faith because I thought I was dying. And just because it ended up being something different, I, as a layperson, could never have diagnosed myself. Sometimes that actually does work, and you can get huge reductions from that. So just like anecdotal evidence, give it a try. You have nothing to lose. So we also have people who listen to this who are caregivers. And you had mentioned your aunt who has cerebral palsy. Is there a way that a caregiver can set up things so that the person is always going to be as okay as possible financially?
Mm-hmm. And that's something that I wish my grandmother had done. My grandmother very much came of age in the kind of like family takes care of family viewpoint. So she never signed my aunt up for the Social Security that she was entitled to, and there were other government programs that she was entitled to. And my grandmother was kind of didn't trust the government. That would be my grandmother.
I like the women in your family.
Yeah, my grandma Betta was she was a firecracker. So her plan was the family would always take care of Robin, and things don't always go the way that you anticipate. And so Robin is now, my aunt is now in a facility for adults, so that they can live independently. It's not ideal, but it's, what the family can afford. So like the first thing is like, look into what is available through the government. There's not as much available as you would like. If you are on SSI, there's that requirement of having no more than $2,000 in your name, which is, that seems just cruel to me. But there are options out there. The other thing is there are a number of special needs trusts available. There are lawyers out there who can put together special needs trust. So a dear friend of mine has a 13-year-old boy who has fairly severe autism. and it's unclear if he's ever going to be able to live independently. And so my friend asked me if I would be willing to be a trustee for the special needs trust she and her husband have put together in case something happens to the two of them. And so that's the sort of thing where, like, looking into spending an hour with a lawyer who specializes in these kinds of trusts is time and money well spent, because they can help you navigate what is most difficult about dealing with the finances of living with a disability, and also make sure that you have something set up to ensure financial security later in life.
That is wonderful. So what kind of person would you find? Would you just find a regular accountant, or would you find someone, how would you find that special needs, the person who would be able to specialize in that?
So there are lawyers. Generally, if you look for an estate planning lawyer, and if you find like local estate planning lawyers and call and ask if they have anyone who specializes in special needs trusts.
That is fantastic advice. So I have another one for you. Again, I'm just going to keep you on on your toes on this. My apologies. A lot of us who have chronic illness or disability, we get very bored staying at home. And I know so many of us who have started businesses or started things, like I started the podcast and I write and illustrate kids' books, and I run a second podcast because I don't stay still well. What's some of your advice about starting a business up?
So the thing about starting a business is anything that you can do with no overhead, no fees to start. I mean,
podcasts.
Podcasting and writing and illustrating. Those are great. You probably already have the art supplies. You already have the have the computer. That's yeah, yeah, exactly. So, and that's a really great way to kind of like allow something that could be a hobby become an income generator for you. It's when you have to put any money down that you really need to be careful with new businesses. And there's so much with the internet. There's so much that you can do without actually having to spend any money, other than incidentals here and there. So that's the first thing is don't. But it's very easy to go gung-ho and be like, I'm going to buy an entire podcasting studio or, whatever it is.
Don't do that. Do not do that, people. If you like this podcast and you're fine with it, I will tell you right now, it's done on my 8-year-old iMac and GarageBand. So there's not even a microphone in front of me. These were given to me in mic. Don't buy a big podcast studio.
Yeah, so that's the sort of thing where like just you don't need to spend money to start a business. And then the second thing is what I did when I first started freelancing, and I am so glad I got into the habit of it, was every single check that I got, every time I got paid, even if it was as little as $25 or $50, I made sure I put 35% of it in savings to pay my quarterly taxes. So
please do that, everyone. I ran a business for 10 years and I didn't get this advice on time, and we ended up with a $30,000 tax bill we could not pay. So please do this. Yeah.
So getting in the habit, and again, it's if it's a business whether you're first starting, like when I was first freelancing, I thought I was just doing it to bring a little bit of money in that one year, and I probably made like $12,000 or $13,000 that year. I mean, it was not much money, and I did not end up owing taxes because what my husband's withholding was that his corporate job covered what would have been my taxes. But because I got in the habit of it, for one thing, at the end of that year, I had that amount of money that I could reinvest back in the business, which is what I have continued to do since then. So I've got, if there's any tax money that you don't need to spend, you can, okay, I've got a little bit of money. I can buy like a nice microphone or, whatever it is. And then also you've got to remember you are not necessarily going to be at that level always. So if you do keep going with the business, if you're already in the habit of setting aside 35% of everything you make, then you are going to be in a much better place when you start making more money and actually do owe the quarterly taxes, and you don't want the tax man to send Spike the the enforcer to your house.
If Spike is a German Shepherd, go ahead and send Spike. We love dogs. So I don't make money, just in case the IRS is listening right now. But one thing to always keep in mind if you're on disability is to make sure you've read through your disability packet, because if you make too much money, it deeply affects your disability, and they do not take that kindly. Again, anyone listening, I don't actually make money on any of this. This is to keep me busy. So, but definitely make sure you've looked at your disability packet, because they will do a whole bunch of stuff to you if you make money more than what they say you can. It gets crazy. Mm-hmm. So I was going to ask you about something that I see pushed a lot, and I'm not sure if it's a good idea, is the using home equity to get through bad disabling times. Is that something that's recommended against for? Again, please don't sue us. This is something to discuss with lawyers and financial advisors. I'm just curious.
So that's one of those, like, if you've got a list of options, that should be close to the bottom.
Excellent.
So that is something where if you have any reason to believe that the disabling event is temporary. So I'll give you an example. Right now, my husband has pneumonia. He has walking pneumonia, and he's okay. This is the sickest I've ever seen him. He's the person who I usually have to wrestle him to the ground and call in for him when he's sick, because he does not like missing work. And so we're coming up on 2 weeks he's been out. So we're not concerned about it, but we've had to talk to his boss about how he will code the time away from work. And if he could maybe work from home and just say, like, I'm just trying not to get everybody sick. But, he does also need to focus on getting well. So this theoretically could become a short-term disability. And so, if we were in a dire financial straits and just needed to be able to get through this, a home equity loan might not be a bad idea, because we anticipate that he'll be back on his feet soon and we'll be able to get back to work, and we'd be able to pay off that loan. However, you never know what's going to happen. So that's why taking out that line of credit is low on the list of things that you want to do to be able to deal with it. It's a possibility. Just go into it with your eyes wide open and know all the caveats.
And again, our international audience, we are in the United States, which means we don't necessarily get sick days. So I know in many of your countries, if you are sick, you are paid to stay home and not get everyone else sick. Here, you actually are penalized for trying to protect your fellow workers. Just a nice little reminder for everyone who's like, why are they talking about this? Of course you stay home if you have pneumonia. Not in the United States. Yes. So I was going to ask you something, and I just lost my brain. Wow. Sorry, my medication's kicking in way faster than I thought it would, and I'm trying to catch up with it. So for HSAs, which are what we have in the United States, which is health savings accounts, which, by the way, I didn't know, if you are on Medicare, you don't get to use it. Really big shock. Is there anything else you want to say about HSAs? Because they can be super helpful if you're not on Medicare.
I am of two minds about HSAs. I think they're great if you're healthy.
So's insurance.
Yeah. Because the problem with an HSA is you have to have a high deductible health insurance plan to be able to have an HSA. And high deductible is high deductible. I think the minimum is like $5,500 a year. And you're still also paying premiums. So you've got the premiums you're paying every month, the high deductible. So, for instance, earlier this year, my right eye went wonky, like it was just blurred. Turned out I had optic neuritis, but that's something that they can only diagnose through process of elimination. So my little eye adventure cost over $4,000. So we would have had to pay all of that out of pocket. That's the problem with the HSA. So you're already spending money for the premiums, the high deductible in case you actually do need medical care, and then on top of that, you need to find the money to put into the health savings account. Now the money goes in tax-free, or pre-tax, so that's good, and it comes out without being taxed if you use it for an actual medical need. The problem is like this only works if you're healthy and then like for many years before you need to access the HSA. Um, when people talk about doing HSAs in preparation for retirement, because I do write about retirement quite a bit, and I actually think that a Roth IRA makes more sense rather than an HSA. So for listeners, a Roth IRA is an independent retirement account. And the Roth IRA is the kind that you fund with money you've already paid taxes on. So, but what that means is you can take the money out tax-free. Now, there are limits on how, or minimums on how old you have to be able to access the money. You have to be 59 and a half. I do not know if there are sorry, my brain just stopped working.
No, I communicable disease of like brain fog just like went straight over to you.
Yeah. So there, I don't know if there are exceptions for disability in terms of accessing your Roth IRA. I believe that there are. There are generally exceptions for those sorts of tax advantaged accounts. But the reason why I believe in those is because you don't have to use the money for medical if you continue to remain healthy. You can use the money for medical, and you're still pulling it out tax-free because you've already paid taxes on it. So now for someone who is living on a disability budgets, finding money to put into a Roth IRA or an HSA in the first place sounds hilarious. But, places where you can put money aside is always helpful, like thinking that through. And then something that it wasn't until I started writing about money that I thought of this, but figuring out how to diversify your taxes. An accountant mentioned that, which means like make sure you're not paying all your taxes all at once. Mm. So, and so he was talking specifically in terms of.
Sorry, you have a guest over there. I see the little kitty.
Yeah. This is the dude.
Oh, I love a good reference.
So when my kids are old enough to figure out the reference, they are going to be so confused.
I think the kids are always just going to be confused and they get old enough to figure us all out. So that brings me to another question. A lot of us with chronic illness and disability have children. What can we do about like saving for college, or is it just the same sort of idea of what other people would do, or is there anything special for people with disability to save up for kids?
So the thing that I want people to remember is, and I'm very much guilty of this, where like it is very important to me for my kids to be able to go to whatever college they want to go to and can get into. I don't want money to be the limiting factor.
Again, international audience, college not free. College yes. Up to over $100,000 depending on where someone goes, and to get a bachelor's degree at a state school currently in California. I think they were telling us it was going to be about 40,000 something rather. So this is not a small amount. I know you guys in England are really pissed off because you're paying 10,000 a year, I believe. We're not even close over here. That's almost junior college. So just wanted to make that clear for everyone. It's like, why are they worried about this? Is why. Okay, sorry.
For me, it's very important that my kids be able to go to school, whatever school they want to. I don't want money to be the reason they can't go to their preferred school. If they can't get in, that's fine. That's life.
Whole nother issue.
Yeah. But, if they got into their dream school and their father and I just can't afford it, that would break my heart. The thing is, though, even with that viewpoint, I have to remember, what are my kids going to thank me for in 40 years? So if I put money aside for college and neglect my own retirement, and I have to live in my kid's basement, they are not going to thank me for the college degree.
That is a beautiful point.
So you got to take the long view and recognize that as much as you want to be able to give your kids this gift of an education, and I totally get that, the more important gift that you want to give them is your own financial security, so that you are not in a position where they then have to choose between taking care of you and being able to send their kids to college or being able to retire themselves. So, the being financially secure personally should be your very first item on the to-do list. After that, if you're able to put money aside for your kids' college, that's wonderful and it's an excellent gift. But it is not necessary. You can get loans for college. There are things that kids can do to be able to get the education that they need, because you can't take loans for disability, you can't take loans for retirement, but you can take loans for college.
That is a wonderful point. I just also want to say, because we have a 17-year-old here at home, even if you think that the Ivy Leagues are out of the picture, if it's a financial issue, most of the Ivy Leagues are now free for families that make less than 100,000 and completely free for families that make less than 60. I was shocked by that. I just wanted to, as we're freaking everyone out who's listening to this, I want to just put a little ray of sunshine in that there are things, and that there are states like Oregon and San Francisco that are looking into, San Francisco's not a state, I'm sorry, California, which I freaking live in. You'd think I'd have this together. Doing well, people. That there are states that are now looking at free at least the year after high school. So there are things in the works. I don't want to just be all doom and gloom, but I also want to explain for everyone listening who's like, we don't have that problem over here in our country. So
I also there's some of the best teaching you're going to find is at community colleges. Because the professors are actually teachers. They're not there to the publisher parish that they talk about. So
yes.
So that's also something to remember.
And if you really want the ultimate tip, it's go to places that are a junior college that's near Stanford. That's Foothill. Or I went there. Or go to any of the junior colleges near MIT, NYU, UCLA, UC Santa Barbara, any of the big colleges. If you go to the junior college that's near there, most of the adjunct professors teach there. So you get the same education at a eighth of the cost. Just my tip to everyone. I know I'm not the financial advisor here, but that's how I got through college and paid for it. So, well, that, and I also am older. So I think it's really important when we talk about the millennials and like, why aren't you able to handle yourselves? Well, when I went to junior college, it was $11 a unit. Mm-hmm. Now it's $50 a unit. So I think it's really important to like remember those things too. We're getting close to the holidays, and I was wondering, do you have any tips for people who have a massively decreased budget on how to handle holiday spending? Because the numbers are obscene in how much we spend on gifts during the holidays. Do you have any suggestions or things that you do in your own family to keep sanity around holiday spending?
So I try really hard to, for me, like the gift spigot, I want to turn off in general. Just, especially once I had kids, people, they so want to show their love, and the easiest way to do that is to buy something. But it just, and it's so much easier to buy things now than it was when I was a kid. If my grandmother wanted to buy me a toy, she had to go to Toys R Us, whereas all my mom has to do is click a button on her iPad. So for me, I already start with like, I prefer experience gifts. And so that's what I ask for. And that's what I try to give as much as I can, is experience gifts, as much as, within my budget. So like things, and so that sort of thing can allow you to be a little bit more, circumspect about how much things cost. If you start with, I'm going to give experience gifts, you can start thinking about like, well, what are experiences that are low cost or even free that I could give, and find a way to make it a beautiful presentation. Like if you want to take someone on a picnic, have a basket with, and you can even just find something at Goodwill and put things in it, a blanket and like, a bottle of wine, that sort of thing, and just say like, I'm going to take you on a picnic when the weather warms up, or since you're in California, I'm sure it's nicer there than it is here in Wisconsin.
You're gonna kill me, but it's 80 degrees right now.
Oh goodness.
Which I have a heart condition, so I'm hating. I would so much rather be where you are. I'm like, I can't even go outside of my house right now, because once it's 80, my heart goes into insanity. So I'm stuck here, and like my fan is right over me right now. I should do Brett girl hair right now. But yeah, I'm so sorry. I know that would probably be much more fun for you to be out here. So we're getting close to the end, and I really just want to like, you've given me so much information. I can't thank you enough. What is like the number one thing that you're like, if I could just scream it from the rooftops, put it on a billboard, any person, I wish you would do this for your finances?
I wish you would pay attention to them. I talked about productively ignoring your finances. One of the things people tend to want to avoid thinking about money. And the problem is you are in a relationship with your money. And so if you, every time you saw your spouse or partner was like, oh, I got to do something with you, you would not have a very good relationship. And that's kind of how it is with money. If your feeling when you're paying bills is like, oh, I hate this, you are going to have a negative relationship with your money. And if you have a negative relationship with your money, things kind of reinforce. So finding a way to make paying attention to your money more fun, and something you look forward to, which sounds crazy, but it is possible. I mean, and also money is like laundry. You're never done. So you have ways of making yourself do laundry too.
No, I don't.
Theoretically.
We just discovered who the adults in this conversation is. No, I hear you. And like having the Acorn app was actually a fun way to keep track. I knew that no matter what I did, it was never going to flash red things at me and make me sad and scared. Like, that's helpful.
Yeah, and that's there's a lot of gamification with the fintech apps. For me, I love a good star chart, star sticker chart. Like I did this every day this month, and I got a yellow gold star.
Oh, your kids are 10 and 8. I love that.
So, and I actually do an Excel spreadsheet that I have color coded and it's in rainbow order. But there are any number of ways to make it a little bit more fun. And if you take the time to take care of your money is going to take better care of you.
That is a wonderful place to stop on, unless you have something else that I just randomly have forgotten, which happens more than you could possibly imagine.
Well, I do just want to give a quick pitch for my book. It's called End Financial Stress Now.
That is wonderful.
And it's you can pay off debt and save money on any income. And I tried very hard to make one of my big pet peeves about personal finance books is that they are often geared towards upper middle class folks who are just bad with money. And I'm not saying those folks don't need help, but
not as much as the rest of us.
And the rest of us need more help. So I tried to be very cognizant of the fact that not everyone is able to just, stop drinking lattes and everything will be fine. So I tried to make it clear that like, even if you can't fix all of your financial problems, you can reduce or end your stress.
That is wonderful. And if you go over to our show notes, the first thing you will see is a link to the book, a link to your website, a link to all social media. Please follow. This is all really good and advice, and not only good advice, but not dry and boring advice. This is like financial planning for people with no attention span. This is wonderful. I've been like obsessively going through the blog and taking lots of notes. I am hoping someday to be able to convince you to do guest blog articles on our blog. I would love that if you're ever willing to.
Absolutely, yeah.
That would be amazing. I will, and I know your publicist's name now, so I will absolutely bug you. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. This has been a lot of fun.
Until next week, be kind, be gentle, and be a badass.